I have a question. I'm not extremely technical, and I'm not a mathematician, and I'm not an expert in LaTeX. However, you used the term, I think, accessible LaTeX. Can you further define what you picture in your mind when you use the word accessible? Describe the landscape.
Okay, I spoke about this last week, and
I'm sorry I didn't make it.
That's all right. I'm sure some of the people listening didn't make it last week as well. And some people thought, and it's a natural thing to think, that I had in mind some accessible PDFs, checking that the PDF produced by LaTeX are accessible as PDF, but that's not what I had in mind. It's just that LaTeX is so closely bound to PDF that that's the habit of thought we have. What I have in mind is documents, and I'm excluding the preamble. I'm just talking about the sort of the main body of the document that can, in today's world, or in a world not far from today's world, be converted into something that is accessible. So
accessible mean to visually impaired people, whatever.
Yeah. Accessible is always in relationship to some person in some circumstance, but I'm particularly thinking of visually impaired, but it might also be people who have visual impairments or motor skills impairments.
I mean, some contexts it could mean something like open access or something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes when people talk about accessible mathematics, they mean you don't need any calculus to study it. And there's a branch of mathematics called logic, which has things called accessible cardinals and inaccessible cardinals, and they have nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church at all.
Dare I say, not to mention the ineffable cardinals.
Let's not go too far down that route. But so I'm looking for source documents written in LaTeX, and Kelly and somebody else said, I should allow Markdown as well. People should be allowed to write Markdown, and you should check that for accessibility. So the basic idea is that it provides some sort of accessibility check for the LaTeX you're writing. And the checks it will provide will have to be, this sort of thing will have to be sort of developed in the field a lot, in terms of discovering problems that you weren't aware of and fixing them. So to cut to the chase, by accessible LaTeX, I mean a source document, a text document written in LaTeX notation that by all rights should produce accessible outputs. So if the source document has got, what's the word? Fixed spacing, by that I mean visual space is used instead of formatting commands, that sort of thing. So the LaTeX should be like accessible HTML. Accessible HTML is stuff that should behave properly in a web browser for people who are visually disabled and so forth. So accessible LaTeX should behave properly. So my goal last week, one of my projects for next year, is to write some sort of accessibility checker for LaTeX documents. And I see no reason why that shouldn't be packaged up in what I called a snap, together with typesetting sufficient for that. So the main problem is that the current way of using tech is, well, we don't know what you want to typeset, so we'll give you an installation that will typeset anything you throw at it. And then that is, of course, huge and a big obstacle to cooperation. Whereas my approach is, you make your mind up from a limited choice what you want to typeset, and we'll provide you a package that does just that and does it properly. And because Hegel actually said, one who wants to do something great must learn to limit oneself. That, you know, you have to limit oneself to do something. And by making a well-chosen choice of what you allow in, you've got a better chance of success. So something I talked about last week was, in the early days of computing, the phrase came about garbage in, garbage out, which was, if you ask me to do calculations, but the data you feed to me is rubbish, then the outcome will be rubbish. And the idea of a accessibility checker for LaTeX source is to detect garbage before it gets too far.
Can you give an example? I know you said line spacing maybe, but I'm under the impression that a LaTeX document, a text document, is just text.
It is just text, and most LaTeX documents will be at least 95% accessible without much work. The sort of things that might cause problems is is interaction with MathJax. So if you have an equation in LaTeX, you can actually put text inside the equation, and then inside the text you can put mathematics. So it's so I suspect that might actually confuse MathJax, or at least cause some difficulties. There may be issues relating to equation numbers and so forth. I don't know. What I sort of know is that if you take an average LaTeX document and put it through some sort of converter, it will be mostly accessible, where mostly might be 85, 90, 95%. Even 97 or 98%, but 98% accessible might not be good enough. I don't know. And if you can get it better, then why not get it better?
In order to test for accessibility, you would be testing against some standard, isn't that right?
Well, some rules, let's say.
Rules, okay.
And